Hi, I'm Terry Brock, and this is a fun video that you're about to watch. It was recorded on a day on Facebook Live when Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies seemed to be just crashing. Seemed like the sky was falling. So I got two real good experts who know crypto, who know Bitcoin, and what to do for you in this situation. One of them, Jeff Berwick. The other one is Sterlin Luxan. You are going to love this here as we look at Bitcoin, is the sky falling? To this important broadcast here. I'm Terry Brock, and I'll be your host today as we talk about, it looks like the sky is falling. Bitcoin is crashing in price. We're seeing other cryptocurrencies crashing in price. Well, we brought two gentlemen in to help us out. A couple of good buddies of mine who really know about cryptocurrencies, know about Bitcoin, and I'm hoping I get some relief here and be able to find help and light at the end of the tunnel. Joining us from his offices in Acapulco, Mexico, is the head of the Dollar Vigilante and Anarchast, Jeff Berwick. Jeff, good to have you with us today, sir.
Good to see you too, Terry.
And we also have a columnist who is a journalist, tech journalist, matter of fact, over at Bitcoin.com, and he is a psychologic anarchist. His name is Sterlin Luxan, and he's joining us now. Sterlin, nice to have you with us, sir.
It's great to be here, Terry. Thank you.
Well, we're glad you could be here because both of you, I'm really distraught now. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Sterlin, I know that you are currently a candidate working on your master's degree in clinical mental health. So I'm going to see if you can help me out a little bit. I'm distraught. It looks like the sky is falling. Bitcoin is going to crash, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Can you say some words that are going to help me on this?
Yeah, first I'll say don't panic and don't get on any kind of psychiatric medications. I think everything's going to be okay. And as we see in the Bitcoin space right now, we have a situation where over the last 2 hours, the price has already rebounded and has started to come back up. So and some people speculate that it may be what we call a dead cat bounce, and so the price might look like it's going to come up and then go back down. But I think that we've taken the brunt of the blow from the Chinese exchanges issue just over the last couple of days. So I think we're going to be okay in terms of that. So don't panic, don't go wild, don't run out in front of a car in the street or anything like that.
Okay, that sounds like good words of advice, psychologically sound, because we were concerned, those of you joining us might be aware, Bitcoin has been going down in price. We've seen a major drop in the last few days, also with other currencies, and it looked really bad. A lot of people saying, oh, it's the end. And matter of fact, Jeff Berwick, I want to bring you in on this one. That very wise and all-knowing economic advisor, a sage that we respect so much, he's a banker, and so he must know what he's talking about. Jamie Dimon with Citibank, and if he said that Bitcoin is going down, it has to be true. I mean, that has got to be the truth, doesn't it, Jeff?
Well, absolutely not. Jamie Dimon is a complete fraud himself. He works for a completely fraudulent organization called J.P. Morgan, which is based off the banking industry in the U.S., which is based off of fractional reserve banking, which in and of itself is a fraud. And they deal in U.S. dollars, which itself is also a fraud. It's I call it a shitcoin, really, because it's got none of the good qualities of Bitcoin. So I don't really care what Jamie Dimon has to say. But as far as what's going on with Bitcoin right now, it's I think a lot of this is related to China, but I also think that it needed the entire cryptocurrency space absolutely was getting way overheated, and it needed a major sell-off. And I've been saying that was going to happen, and it is now happening, and I'm happy it's happening. In fact, I'm a little angry. I woke up early this morning around 7 in the morning and checked the Bitcoin price, and it was below 3,000, and I was absolutely ecstatic because I wanted to buy a lot more, and I somehow just sort of passed out for a couple hours, and when I woke up it was $3,500. I was like, missed a little bit, but as far as where it could go from here, it could still go down. Absolutely. We could use even more steam coming off of this, massive rise. We're basically in Bitcoin where we were about a month ago, right after the fork. And of course, we now have Bitcoin Cash as well. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So we're right now at $3,500 on Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin Cash is around $500. I'll just quickly check that. It's $400. So it's around $4,000 total, which I still say it's important to look at the total because 90% of people who held Bitcoin on August 1st have not moved their Bitcoin Cash. So 90% of people really still have both. So I think after a few more months, we can't really talk about them as being combined anymore, or definitely after a year or two. But I think for the time being, I think it is still important to look at it. So you're looking at around a total Bitcoin price of 4,000, which is right around where it was about a month ago. So we're nowhere near in anything extreme or anything like that. This is a fairly normal sort of it rose too fast, in my opinion. It basically doubled in price in the last month. And now it's coming down to where it was. If you look at where Bitcoin was 1 year ago, it was at $600. So I think from 600 to 5,000 to have a bounce back to around 3,000 is very, very normal, just completely to be expected. And I've been warning or telling Dollar Vigilante subscribers that this would be happening. And we're seeing a lot of the other cryptocurrencies, of course, have a major sell-off. We're at about $120 billion market cap right now. It was $170 billion just a few days ago. So we've lost $50 billion of market cap in the last few days. But it was at $60 billion just about a month and a half ago. So all of this is quite normal. There's absolutely nothing to panic about here. And Jamie Dimon saying something about Bitcoin is just laughable, in my opinion, considering he's, like I said, a complete fraud, working for a fraudulent organization, working in a fraudulent financial system, working with a fraudulent currency, fiat currency called the US dollar. So absolutely nothing to worry about there. But talking about China is something interesting. I'll leave it to you guys if you want to pick it up from here. But I think there's more to talk about with what's going on in China. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot going on. And Jeff, seriously, you really say a lot. Good. There's a lot that we see happening now with the cryptocurrencies. And too often people will just freak out and they'll say, oh, gee, it's all going crazy because we see some drop. But I think you put it in perspective. Wait a minute. A year ago was at $600. Today it comes back from maybe a ridiculous high of 5,000, but coming back. But there are those that say it could go beyond 5,000 and even higher. And we see that. But let's think about China. A lot of this was spurred by what's happening in China. And Sterlin, you're a journalist. You're a person that's watching this there at Bitcoin.com, and you're seeing what is happening with it. Tell us what the role of China has been on this and your thoughts on that.
Sure. First, I just want to kind of echo what Jeff said just now. It is true that the space definitely needed kind of cool off a little bit. There was a huge rally in Bitcoin over the last couple of months, and that goes with all the other cryptocurrencies as well. And all the other cryptocurrencies were up 15 or 20% several times over the course of the last 2 weeks. So the sell-off was definitely coming. And one of the issues that has taken place and that Jeff alluded to was there were investors and traders in the space who also decided to finally take their profits. And that's where all of this started at first. When it hit the 5,000 mark, what happened was traders and investors started to take their profit. They wanted to make some fiat cash off of that. Some may who not be totally invested in the Bitcoin ecosystem. But then what happened right around that time, China also announced that they were going to ban ICOs. They were going to ban these startups who wanted
those
to
initial coin offerings.
That's right, initial coin offerings. So they didn't want that. They didn't want that to impinge on their country, on their government, and all of that, of course, is nonsense. If somebody wants to get involved in generating or creating a cryptocurrency, even if it looks scammy or has issues, it's always up to the investors to do their own due diligence. It's up to anybody involved to make sure that they understand what they're getting involved in. It's not up to any kind of government or any kind of authority to tell people what they can and can't do and what they can and cannot invest in. So that's what happened first, and that doubled up on what was going on with the investors wanting to take profits. So that caused the initial aspect of the crash. And then, of course, we had a whole bunch of rumors circulate just a couple of days after that they wanted to ban the exchanges, that the Chinese government wanted to ban local exchanges in China. And I still don't know if the news regarding that was completely true based on what we've been reporting on Bitcoin.com and some of these other news sites like Cointelegraph and Coindesk. It's still sort of up in the air. But what did happen was the first Chinese exchange, I think it's BTCC, they announced that they were going to be closing down rather quickly, and that's because they were involved in the ICO trades and being involved in the startups as well. But then just recently, we just published it today. I think it was Jamie Redmond who published it. He said that via BTC and OKCoin and what's the other one? Helio.
Yeah, all based in China.
Right. And they announced that they would be staying open a little longer, I think, to October 31st. because they weren't directly involved in the ICOs, the initial coin offerings, or the startups. So they're going to try to remain open. But they also announced a lot of these Chinese companies, and this is where I think we're seeing some of the comeback, some of the faith in the space, and more investors coming in and getting involved in the space, is because they announced that this isn't the end, of course, of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. This isn't even the end of ICOs. These aren't just going to disappear because some government bureaucrat waves a magic wand out and says, oh, now all these are going to go away and be gone. No, they won't. A lot of them will try to get in line with their government, fall in line, and then they will be reignited. And now a lot of the investors and a lot of people involved in this space will try to find more decentralized ways to get involved in Bitcoin. And there are decentralized exchanges out there. For instance, Dan Larimer created one called BitShares. And a lot of people may get involved in BitShares and start doing their trading on decentralized platforms. And more of these will just come into existence as we move into the future.
And in fact, we see that changing a lot. And Jeff, I want to get your perspective. Based on that, we see that China has banned, let's see, not only are they now shutting down the exchanges, or maybe just temporarily. We're hearing that, once they get licensed, they might do something. But they have banned, let's see, YouTube and Google and Facebook. So what's going to be the effect on the market if we see the exchanges shut down even long term there in China? What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, I think there's a lot to talk about when it comes to China. First of all, just talking on a realistic level of what's actually going on the ground there. I think most people don't understand what is really going on. First of all, a lot of people think China is communist. The government calls itself communist, but they're actually much, much more capitalist in many ways than the U.S. or many other countries now. They have much lower taxes, much lower regulation. So that's one thing to take into mind and to consider, as well as just how much they can enforce things there. Unlike the U.S., where almost every person who lives in the U.S. today is just a bootlicking slave who just will do anything that the government tells it to do. The land of the free, home of the brave. It's neither. It's absolutely the opposite now, in most cases, except for people like yourselves, of course. So you're both in the U.S. there, and you're not. But there's, we're definitely a small minority compared to most people. Most people, when the government knocks in the U.S., they will bow down and lick their boots, which is so sad and pathetic. But in China, a lot of people, and you see it all the times when cops will do something wrong in China, the whole town will go and kill the cops, which I really prefer. That's rather than just bootlicking and just doing whatever the government says. So in China, it's not quite the same as the U.S. So they've actually kind of semi-banned Bitcoin in the past, and no one cared. And it's beautiful and it's great. And that's why a lot of the wealth is moving towards places like China now, as opposed to places like the U.S., where it is such a draconian, tyrannical, police state, sort of half fascist, half communist today. So keep that in mind when you hear about government regulations in China. It's not the same as it is in the U.S. They won't just turn things down or shut things off if the government says overnight in China as much as they would in the U.S. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that what China, and Sterlin pointed out, it's quite unclear what the government's even trying to do here, what they're even trying to say are their regulations, which is quite typical of governments, but even more typical in places like China, where they just don't have these giant governments. So we're not really quite sure what they're exactly trying to do. They're trying to say they want to make ICOs illegal, whatever that means. And as Sterling pointed out, a lot of these things can just move to decentralized exchanges anyway. So as long as people have access to something like Bitcoin, which they still do, as far as we can tell, they have not said Bitcoin's illegal in China, then you can get access to all these other currencies. And really what's happening in China is telling me is everyone should be rushing to get into Bitcoin as fast as possible, because if other countries like the U.S. start to say things like ICOs are illegal and you want to participate in them, you won't be able to in the U.S. because so many exchanges just won't do it because of how tyrannical the U.S. government is. But if you have Bitcoin, you can just go on a decentralized exchange and you can just do whatever you want. You can ignore the government, which is always the best way to live your life. It's very interesting. And I think a lot of people have said, a lot of naysayers about things like cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin have said, well, what if the government shuts it down? Well, first of all, you can't shut down Bitcoin. You have to shut off the power over the internet. What you can do as a government is you can threaten the slaves in your geographic jurisdiction and say, if we catch you doing this, we're going to kidnap you and put you in a rape camp, which a lot of people should wake up and say, hey, why don't we get rid of this nefarious mafia organization that keeps doing this to people? They really can't shut things down. As Sterling pointed out, they could just make repercussions for people who happen to live within the reach of their guns, but they can't shut it down. So this is very interesting because a lot of people have said, what if the U.S. shuts down Bitcoin? What if it makes Bitcoin illegal? This is really like the sort of the question. It will still exist. It will actually probably go up in value because people will realize, holy cow, we're actually slaves. They are actually a criminal organization and nothing more as they start to realize this. So it's very, very interesting and very interesting to watch all this stuff happen. You're seeing so many countries have so many different laws and rules and regulations. And you know what? Bitcoin don't care. Bitcoin is the, what do they call that? The
honey badger, the honey badger.
Honey badger of money. Yeah. Bitcoin don't care about your rules.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Bitcoin don't care. Might not be good English, but it's true. And it's a whole different thing because, and Sterlin, I love your take on that. You know, sometimes I was reading the comments on bitcoin.com, your site where you do writing, and one person was responding that, well, hey, the government could shut this down. It could be a problem if the government shuts it down. And I think too often we think, well, there's only one government, particularly if you happen to be born between the Atlantic and Pacific in the U.S., and you're thinking, well, that's the only thing there is. What are your thoughts on that, Sterlin? If we see one government, whichever one it might be, of the 200 some on the planet, try to shut it down, what do you think the ramifications would be?
I think the ramifications in the short term are definitely a lot of panic and a lot of fear. Whenever governments get involved in the cryptocurrency space, and we've seen this in different places, not to the extent that the Chinese government got involved. I mean, that was the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the price, and sort of the market scared a bunch of people because of how large and involved the Chinese people are with cryptocurrency. But I think over the long term, like Jeff pointed out, and like we were talking about, Bitcoin is the honey badger of money. It will succeed. People will still use Bitcoin. They will use cryptocurrency regardless of governments try to ban it. And here's the thing, even if, Bitcoin does have some weaknesses. It is 100% transparent on the blockchain. And if anybody uses a centralized exchange, they're going to be able to be tracked by things like the SEC and things like the IRS. That's not a problem for government agents. They know that they can do that. So I don't think in the United States they would just outright ban exchanges anyway. That's just my opinion, because it's been pretty easy for them to track down people who have gotten involved with breaking their laws and going outside the scope of their authority. But here's what's also happening. People are starting to use cryptocurrencies like Monero, which use ring signatures and which are completely 100% untraceable and anonymous. So the more that governments try to clamp down on this stuff, the more people are going to start using methods that skirt the authorities, that get outside the scope of what government is trying to do to prevent this from happening. And just besides that fact, who was it talking about this? Somebody was talking about this just a little while ago, but government doesn't even have the manpower or the resources to defeat what we refer to as the sharing economy, or this collaborative consumption economy that's cropping up that cryptocurrency is a huge part of. And we see this not only in cryptocurrencies, but things like Uber and Airbnb. These companies aren't even totally decentralized, and they've cropped up, and governments haven't even been able to stop them. People are still using Uber and Airbnbs everywhere. The cab industry, based on the government licensing requirements, they're all trying to fight Uber based on their activities, and it's just not working. They're still cropping up everywhere. And the more decentralized things become like cryptocurrency, the less governments are going to be able to get involved and stop this stuff. It's sort of laughable to watch the authorities kind of fumble around and deal with this sort of stuff. So I can't wait to see what crops up in the future as we continue looking into cryptocurrencies and decentralization, peer-to-peer technologies.
Yeah, I think you raised some very good points. I think we're seeing what the reaction of governments that are losing power, and they're thrashing around in a mad dash right now. But as we look toward the future and what's happening, Jeff Berwick, you get a chance to travel around the world a lot. And in full disclosure, you and I are involved in the Anarchast event down in Mexico, in Acapulco, and you're kind enough to have me as MC, so I'm grateful for that, and looking forward to this next year. And we also, all three of us, are going to be at the Nexus Conference coming up in just a few days there in Colorado, in Aspen, Colorado. We'll be talking there. I'll be the MC for that as well, and both of you will be speakers. I want to look toward the future. Jeff, you can reach under that desk of yours and get your crystal ball and bring it up there and rub it really well. We're going to look at some other coins that are out there. I know you got it out on there somewhere, but the coins that are out there, and what kind of predictions do you have, let's say really long term, like 6 months from now, where we'll be in the crypto space. If 6 months is a long time from now in crypto space, where are we going? What other coins, in addition to Bitcoin, are you interested in now and think hold some really good opportunities?
Yeah, 6 months in the crypto space, you might as well be talking about 60 years, really.
Yeah, it's
I was
real
thinking
long term.
I was thinking before we came on about how I was going to say I don't know exactly what's going on in China because I haven't had time to look into everything, and that's sort of been my thing. I've been saying for weeks or months now. It's like I don't have time to look. There's so much stuff going on. It's like absolutely crazy. But it's great too.
Yeah, but Jeff, you're wasting all that time at night just sleeping between 12 and if you just give up sleeping, you'd have time for this.
Yeah, I know some people are working on things like that, but I actually love sleep. That's my favorite thing to do. So no, I don't want to give that up. But I love dreaming and stuff like that. But anyway, it's just so much stuff going on, but it's great because we're at the nascent beginning of a beautiful evolution. It's not even a revolution. We're not going back anywhere. This is an evolution in not only money and banking, in everything. This is changing. This is going to change the world. It absolutely is. And for the much, much, much better. Everything we've been talking about, what's all the problems? Government, central banks, those are going to be gone. Cryptocurrencies are going to get rid of those things. And we're going to have the free market for the first time in human history. And it's all going to happen the next few years. Maybe not next year, maybe not 2 years, but in the next 5, 10, 20, no more than 30, 40 years, and it's all going to start really happening. So it's going to be super exciting. So I'm really happy to just even be involved in this. It's just so, a lot of people say they can't wait to get up and check their cryptocurrency prices. I can't wait to get up and just hear what the new innovations are. It's just
yes.
This is just changing the game. So looking back a year ago, I just pulled up a chart here of where a lot of these cryptocurrencies were 1 year ago. This is a year ago today, I believe. I might be a little off, but about a year ago. Ethereum, $7. Litecoin, $3. Monero, $8. Dash, $9. Ripple, 0.006. Bitcoin, $800. So that's in the last year. So a lot has happened in the last year. I think it's happened faster than I expected. I did not expect we would be here this fast, but I'm so happy we are. So where are we going from here? Really, what I would say to your average person out there is because so many people still haven't even gotten their first 0.1 Bitcoin or the first Satoshi or anything like that, get into it and start using it. Once you start using it, you will realize what's going on. You'll be like, when I first heard that beep, when I first got my first Bitcoin in 2011, when it was around $3, my eyes opened as big as they could open, and I went, this changes everything. So that's really the sort of thing that I still say to people. If you haven't gotten into this, I was around when the internet started in 1993, and I quit my job at the bank the very first day I heard about the internet. I said, this changes everything, and I'm going to get into it. And I started a company called Stockhouse.com, went on to be worth $240 million. It's still the top financial website in Canada. But I see the same thing with the cryptocurrency space now, the blockchain technology. So really just get into it as far as which ones to follow. I still just say mostly Bitcoin. I haven't been a huge proponent of getting into tons of these ICOs. I don't think I've even featured any ICO. I think the only one I featured was EOS. Which is Dan Larimer, who I'm a big fan of. And it's down quite a bit from when we featured it, actually. So it's our first sort of loss that we've had on cryptocurrencies. I featured around $1.30. It's today 65 cents, so half price for if people want to get into that. It still has months to go, but it could be an Ethereum killer. That's something to look at. If you haven't looked into Steam, and I know you guys are all in Steam. Actually, Sterlin was the first person who really got me to look into Steam. So thank you very much for that, Sterlin. I've made well over $100,000 in Steam since then. So thank you very much. I owe you a beer when you're back in Acapulco.
Yeah, but I earn $100,000 to get a beer. I think that's a pretty good deal.
Well, I could buy you 10 or 20 beers or whatever you like, enough to get you drunk.
Right.
Yeah, very good point. I think we're seeing a real change. And for those of you that are listening to this is a change that is magnificent. I saw the start of the World Wide Web back in 92, 93. We saw what was happening there. We saw this is going to change. We're seeing it today. And I remember back then, a friend of my sister's I was visiting my sister, and a friend was there. And she had 2 little kids at the time, I think like 2 and 3 years old. And I remember I was talking about, I'm really excited about this internet thing. It looks good. And she got really quiet and very firm. And she said, I will never let my children get on the internet. I thought, well, why? She said, because there's pornography and dirty pictures on the internet. And I thought, well, okay, I can understand a mother wanting to take care of her 2 and 3-year-old children. And are there dirty pictures? I read in a book once that there are some dirty pictures. I don't know. Sterlin and Jeff, you might have to help me on this. I don't know if that's true, but I'm thinking they still are, but there's a whole lot more. And I think what we've got to look at is the opportunities here that are going to be enormous and what's ahead for us. Sterlin, if you get reach under your desk there and get your little crystal ball also, rub it real well. What do you see us doing, say, in the next 6 months, really long term there, 6 months in cryptocurrencies? Where are we going and what's the best action for us to take?
Yeah, this is a really awesome question. I actually, this is my shameless plug. I do cryptocurrency consultation for people who are newly getting involved investing in the space. And there's
Shamelessly
several
plug, sir. That's okay.
All right. Good. By the way, it's the Cryptocurrency Confidant on Facebook. But there's several coins that I think that could do well in the future. Like Jeff said, the ICOs can be a risky business, especially with the fact that they're all basically plugged into Ethereum at this point in time because they're built on top of the same blockchain. And so there's always risks when an individual gets involved with ICOs that if anything ever happened to Ethereum, and we've already had one issue with Ethereum whenever they forked Ethereum, there was an issue where a hacker breached one of these ICOs that were being built on top of it. It was referred to as slock.it or just the DAO, the DAO. And anyway, millions of dollars were siphoned out of the DAO, slock.it. But here's what happened. Ethereum was able to fork the reason why they forked their currency is so that they could salvage that money. They forked the currency, and that allowed them to take money back out of the accounts that the hackers put the money in. So any of those kinds of things could potentially happen again in the future because these ICOs, all this technology is still brand new. They're still working out the kinks, and anything could go wrong. So it's always a risk, and I say that to make sure you hedge your bets and diversify into a multitude of different currencies if you do it. But I'll go with what Jeff said. I really think that EOS is a beautiful and brilliant platform, and I think it'll be a great competitor to Ethereum. And we all know that Dan Larimer has built excellent platforms in the past, including Steam, which all of us, again, use regularly and daily. And I've made quite a bit of money on that platform as well, and it's been a very important part of my life. But EOS is great to go with. I think as far as Ethereum-based ICOs, there's one called Aragon that's $1.50 right now. It is basically an application that is supposed to allow us to build decentralized corporations within the blockchain and do stock sharing and crowdfunding and management of the corporation within the blockchain. So it completely removes government and banks and other regulatory institutions from having anything to do with the currency. So I think Aragon is really good. It's been fluctuating between 50 cents and $1.50, but I think that's a really good thing to go with. Any of these totally anonymous and untraceable currencies like Monero are always good to go with. Monero's really picking up steam. I think just a month or two ago it was like $30. Now it's last I looked, I know with all this drama recently, it went back down. It went up to 130, and it was hovering around 100 last time I looked. I think yesterday, day before. But, yesterday and the day before is like light years in terms of the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And that's what Jeff was talking about. When we're talking about the future outlook of these things, you can never know because this stuff happens at a lot greater rapidity than what happens in, say, the stock spaces or any of these other spaces because these currencies are always cropping up. But yeah, Monero, and I think Dash is good as well. I don't think Dash is quite as untraceable as Monero, but I think it's good. I think there's a few other that I have. Of course, I think Steam is a good bet. We've mentioned that already. I think
Zcash would be another one that kind of falls in there.
Yeah, Zcash I think is good too. I still don't think it's quite as secure as Monero, but it's also good. Those are just a few of my hand picks and what I tell my clients that this may be a possible good choice. You can definitely go into it and not have any concerns. And I think EOS in the future, like Jeff said, it's still brand new. They haven't even put out an official product yet. The reason why, and I always tell my clients, make sure you look at the white papers, make sure that these companies or these startups or the coin has some kind of foundation, has a good community, that they really look into and examine that, because if they don't, they could get burnt in the past. But the thing why we go into EOS is because we know Dan Larimer has put in work before and has built great blockchains that are active and functioning today. So I think that's a really safe bet for the future.
Sounds good. All right. Well, gentlemen, very good words of advice. We appreciate that. And for those of you watching this, the one thing that we're going to recommend is not necessarily this stock or that coin or whatever, but I am going to recommend strongly that you get education. Find out what's going on. There's a lot happening in this. As Jeff said, and Sterlin backed him up, this is changing rapidly. We are at a real dramatic point of change in our world, and it's exciting to be here, but you want to make sure you get educated. And a great way to do that is with these two guys. Get to know these two wonderful people. I know them on stage professionally. I also know them off stage. They're marvelous human beings, and you want to get a chance to know about their material, how you can do it. Go over to Jeff's site, look at that, and Sterlin's available there, bitcoin.com. Jeff, people are going to say, okay, I want to get in touch with this Jeff Berwick guy. I want to find out more about what you have, how they can get educated, get involved. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, don't call me at my house. I get too many calls, but you can definitely check us out at dollarvigilante.com. We're also on YouTube. I put out a video almost every day. I'm trying to put them on the new YouTube competitor, the decentralized platform on Steemit called DTube as well. Check that out. If you're interested in
decentralized.
Yeah, and if you're interested in cryptocurrencies, but you don't know a lot, if a lot of this has kind of gone over your head, you can check out we got a free 4-video webinar where you can actually even get your first $50 in Bitcoin at the end of it. Just go to dollarvigilante.com/bank. And if you just want to keep up to date on all this stuff, and as I said, there's so much, it's almost impossible to keep up, but we try to do our very best for our subscribers here at the Dollar Vigilante to give you the best analysis and recommendations in real time. And that's just at our newsletter, which you can get at dollarvigilante.com/subscribe. And otherwise, I just recommend as well for your news just to going to bitcoin.com with Sterlin Luxan, and I think they do a great job over there.
Yeah, very good. Well, Jeff, thank you for being with us. And Sterlin, same question for you. Someone says, hey, I want to know more about what you're doing and how they can get started with Bitcoin, how to get in there. Help us on that. How do we do it?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, if people are interested in getting started on Bitcoin, I really specialize in doing face-to-face, one-on-one consultation, and they can find me at the Cryptocurrency Confidant on Facebook. But if they're interested in they can find me on my regular Facebook page of Sterlin Luxan, or my activist page is Psychologic Anarchist. So Facebook Psychologic-Anarchist, or psychologic-anarchist.com is my regular website. They can also reach me at bitcoin.com and just look me up by my name, Sterlin Luxan, and they can find all of my articles and all of my information. I just recommend using the website in general. But, also looking into Jeff's site, the Dollar Vigilante, is a great resource, and I read Jeff's articles and pay attention to him as much as possible. So that's all great resources as well.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you both. I started this rather distraught, wondering, oh my, what am I to do? However will I survive with Bitcoin crashing, and with even the great Jamie Dimon telling us that Bitcoin is crashing. But now you have restored my faith in humanity, in Bitcoin. I don't know if you've done much to restore it in central banks or the bankers, but then that's a whole other thing anyway. But for those of you joining us, thank you for being here. I'm Terry Brock with terrybrock.com, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Please leave a comment below. Whatever platform you're getting this on, whether it's Steemit or Facebook, YouTube, or some other channel, DTube, as in decentralized tube, wherever you're joining us. Thank you for doing that. Please leave a comment. We want to hear from you. We want to get some reaction from you and find out how we can help you. And for those of you that are joining us on this unrecorded version, we will be monitoring this. So please leave a comment, and that way we can still get back to you. And for those of you who are joining us live, we appreciate that. I'm Terry Brock here in Orlando, Florida, and thank you very much for being with us today.